So we left off with figuring out what this resources does for us and how we should specify exactly the routes that we need, knowing that resources will build all 7 RESTful routes. What if my app only needs like index and show? Then I will only have index and show going, but I can have custom routes if I want to change this helper. Cool. We're going to use this helper a lot, so you'll just get more practice with it. Hopefully it'll clarify some understanding. Cool. So I'm just going to call this like, I don't know, helper path, just so we can kind of see it in action, right? Going back to my controller, right? The problem that we were trying to solve is that we have no seed data. So we want to create these new airplanes. Instead of going into the console, let's actually build out this form, have our application have the functionality to actually build these airplanes. So let's do it. We talked about knowing that in this sort of creating of a model, there has to be 2 methods corresponding to 2 different routes. And that is this new, which is going to be giving me the form that I need to actually take in the data, and then the create, which will run the .create method from active record on my model, so I can actually create a new object based on the user input that I got from the new form. So here I am creating my custom route, which happens to be RESTful, airplane/new, going to my airplanes controller in the new method as a helper. So how would I get to this new? Cool. It's still running actually. Oh wow. Well, I would need to do a get to /new. So simply airplanes with a get to /new will hit this controller action. Bloop. Just kidding. Yeah. What the? The action show cannot be found for airplanes controller. Let's check those routes. Airplanes new, points me to new. What the? Show cannot be found for the airplanes controller. Is it because you only have No, I have it right here. I have this get. Airplanes new should point to airplanes new. Yeah, but I'm only using index and show. Oh. Yeah, got it. Oh, Rails, right? I forgot about this. In Sinatra, do you remember this ID and this new? It read new as an ID because it was defined before, right? Remember what resources will build for me here. It will build this get to airplanes ID, and it will point to an airplanes show. It's too helpful, too powerful. All right, that's what this show is building right now. Any questions on that? So if I got rid of it, this is the exact same line of code. In Sinatra, this params of ID came before new. So when I was going to airplane/new, it read new in the browser, in this URL, as a params of ID. So in the same way that I had to hack my way through Sinatra, I can hack my way through Rails. When I do resources, right, and I take this out, so Rails is smart enough to make sure new comes first. Cool. Again, important to learn the hard way with Sinatra so you can debug. The only reason I knew that this was happening was because it was trying to go to the show action. So as I was looking through the routes, I was like, what's pointing to show? I noticed that it was airplane/ID. I then can infer that the ID in my URL was being interpolated incorrectly. And so I simply switched the routes. And that's how I figured that out. Because I know how Rails works. It does not matter if you memorize everything. Please don't. It's impossible for dumb people like me. But if you want to memorize it, fine. But really, what's important is just how it works. Then you can debug. Cool? Any questions on that? Or how I figured that out? The biggest thing I want you to take away is if you ran into this error, will you know where to look and have an idea of what's happening? Right? That's really about it. Sweet. So let's actually continue. Yeah, we'll just leave it alone. All right. Let's make a new plane. Cool? I want to now talk about this form. I have this form here. What did I want to name this in... what did I want to name this right here? This name right here. Let's take a look at the schema. We have model and wings as our two attributes, right? So what should I put here? Model, possibly. Do I want a value in it? Because I'm just creating, right? Give me a model name. And this form is going to be for the model, and it's going to be model, right? So when I do that, this is just going to give me a sweet label, and now I have my placeholder here. Remember, this model is going to come across as the keys in my params, so naturally I probably want also wings, and then here I want wings to come across. Right, give me a, I think this is like number. Right. So like something like num of wings. Cool? Does that work? All right. Gave you this indicator that Rails will build this for me. There's a couple things I want to go over. Yeah?
What is the for and label pointing to?
Sweet, great question. Look up. Look up. Look up. Label for wings. This is just an attribute of the label tag in HTML that will help with accessibility. Cool? Sweet. Also, Capybara will look for a label for wings, find the input, and then like test on that as well. Yes?
Are you going to use for before this thing comes back?
Yes. So, everything here on lines 3 through 9, does it match up directly? Let's do this. Does it match up directly with what comes across in my HTML? Let's do this. Is there anything surprising or new here? No, right? It's like line for line in my HTML as it comes across in my browser. Obviously, this post should hit what action? Should it hit index.html? What should this hit? It should hit airplanes. Cool. What will happen when I submit this form? What will happen when I submit this form? I will immediately, the user will submit this form, click this submit button right here, which is right here, and the form will submit to something called post/airplanes. Rails will get this submission and go, great, a post to airplanes. Where is Rails going to look to see whether or not we have a post to airplanes? Where will Rails look inside. Cool? Do I have post to airplanes? Now I have post to airplanes. If I did not have this line of code, what would the error message be? Rails could not find route. Undefined route post to airplanes. Oh, you're right. Oh, man. That's my fault. Totally my fault. Embarrassing. Cool. Let's get rid of this. Bloop. Yeah? Ooh. Clowns. Actually, you know what? Yeah, that's fine. I'll leave it alone. I need it for later. When I submit, it's 11. This airplane's weird. Right? It exactly tells you when I submit the form, it should be posting /airplanes. There is no post /airplanes. Cool. What will the error message be right now? It doesn't know which controller to point to, right? It'll say something about like, hey, look in your route. Matter of fact, let's take a look. Airplanes /new. This is 2, like a normal one. And it'll say, I'm just get rid of this for you. What the? Oh, I didn't save it. Bloop. Bloop, 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 bloop. Post to /airplanes. Why are the routes not affected? I don't actually see, there it is. Sometimes Rails takes a second with routes. Rails 4 and Rails 3, 2, and 1 actually, anytime you made a change to your route folder, you'd have to shut down the server and restart it. Rails 5s will auto-load the routes folder, but it's not like instant and always. So sometimes when you make a change to routes, it takes a second for it to take. Cool. It sees a post to /airplanes, but now it's saying missing controller key. Right? Like, why would it say that? There we go. Cool. Now let's fly. Cool. Let's go to the airplane's controller. Going to an action called what? Create. This is the RESTful way. I could, in fact, name it anything I want, making sure that whatever I wind up naming it, I have a method that matches inside my controller. So airplanes create does exist. What the? There we go. Cool. Sweet. 20. Submit. Invalid authenticity token. What is this? All right, run into this one?
Private. Yeah. Need your privates.
No. What is invalid authenticity token? So here's what's going on, right? There is something called cross-site scripting where I can submit a form and I can point it to go wherever I want. It does not have to come from wherever I told it to come from. So here you see that this form, right, is posting to /airplanes, right? Can I do a post to custom inside the DevTools? What will happen when I submit this form? No route error. Post to custom. Wouldn't it make sense that if I went to Google, what does this look like to you? Looks like a form. It looked like a form, right? Does that make more sense to you guys? You want me to talk like that? This is just a form. Somewhere. God, where is this thing? I missed it? This is just style. I'll find it. There it is. Give me that. Chris Brown, right? Action search. Can I go to something else? The get to something else. And I type something here. Cool. Cool math games. Wow, that's the most searched for thing. If I hit Google search, I submit this form, where will it go? It will go to something else. So anyone can make a website and point to any controller action they want, which is why you do not want to leave those routes open, right? So Rails, in all its glory, has been out for a long time. It's on version 5, right? Has figured out people can make a form and point it to wherever they want, even to a different application. So we need to protect against that. So we need to have some sort of authenticity token. So the idea here is that when someone submits this form, I probably want an input, and I want to hide this input, and I want to add in here somewhere some sort of authenticity token that I make, right? It could be like XYZ457, so that I know that form has XYZ457. So when I submit it, the first thing I'm going to do is check, hey, was there a token called XYZ457? Yes, that means that that form must have actually come from me. It's kind of like a username password, but for forms, right? So let's kind of take that into consideration and think about it. There's the form tag, and then there's the form for. There's also something called form with. I'm not going to get into that today. Just kind of the main difference between form for and form tag. All right? Wow, how powerful is this, right? If you download the Rails snippets, if you just put form tag in tab, it will build out a template. If you put form for in tab, it'll build out a template. So form tag, submission path. Where would I want to submit this to? Where does this form want to get its, where would it submit to, right, essentially? So I wanted to submit to this airplanes create, right? I wanted to post to airplanes. Well, this method is a get. What should I change it to? This submission path, what can I change it to? Airplanes. I can hard code this value, but in this post to airplanes, I can say something like as, right, create. So can I do something like, instead of this, I can call it create path. Cool? I don't want to get too far ahead, so I'm just going to leave it to /airplanes and leave this alone. But that's what that helper is doing. So, airplanes path? Yeah, I can submit to airplanes path right now because it exists, right? So for those that are tracking. It gets really dicey, so let me lead this. And then if there's like a question on lack of understanding, and not necessarily can you do this, a lack of understanding, I will answer your question. But let me go through this since we're a little bit behind. Oh, you're good. So a post to /airplanes will hit airplanes create, right? This is just a class, and it's just going to add some style. Boop, boop, boop. If you want your builders to be multi-line like this, you could pass it multiple lines, but it must be wrapped in these parentheses. What we can do is simply, and this will be something like, I don't know, search. We can do search for now. How do I submit this? Can I just do this? What is this submit tag? What is like this doing? This looks like what? HTML? Right? Looks like Ruby. Cool. Let's take a look. Okay. What is it? Airplanes new? Didn't like that. There was something wrong with. Oh, right. Sorry. Let's get rid of this real quick. Let's just talk about form tag, and I'll show you the difference. So here, all I'm going to do is drop a HTML form in like a paragraph. Cool. Here I'm going to put, okay, that's not what I wanted. Right? This is the form tag form, just so you can kind of see it. Right? Naturally, I'm going to go into like the form 4. See this HTML form and the form tag form. Cool? So far, so good? Here we can already see this is the HTML form, form tag, form gets built for me. Exactly as I told it, it will do a post to /airplanes. But what's this? UTF-8? It's not super important. If you want to Google it, feel free, ask me offline. But it does this hidden authenticity token with this ridiculously long value. Why would this be so long and so random? It is nearly impossible to guess, right? If my form always did something like XYZ456, people can wind up guessing it. And they can submit forms with my authenticity token. I want to make sure, let's just take a look at this, ready? The lasts are like TIGFG, almost like tiger or something. I don't know. What's the last now? What's it now? It will always be different, and it should be. Because if it winds up being the same, I can copy it. I can go to your website, see your authenticity token, copy it, paste it into my form, and submit it to your server. I want it to be random, different, encrypted, and nearly impossible to guess. That way it's actually secure. Kind of like everyone's password here, right? Talk about passwords next week. But everyone understand where and why this is here. Not necessarily how to build it, but where and why it's here. Yeah.
But I'm still seeing the like action airplanes, so and they have the token right now. Am I still able to change it?
Yeah, if I go and manually change this and I submit, it'll be like, hey, that token didn't match. Invalid authenticity token.
Yeah, I mean changing the action. That was our concern, right?
No, I was just simply changing this to show you that you can change it to whatever you want. The concern is no longer this. The concern is to secure your app. When a form submits, Rails needs to know, hey, was that form built by me? Cool? So Rails will build this form for you and verify whether or not it's legit. Great. Now I have some text, and I can submit it. So the submit tag will simply build an input type submit, and the form tag will build you a form based on this text field tag. What do you think this builds for you? All right, just like a text. Cool. So we have form tag, and these are Rails helpers. This is a Ruby method, right, coming from Rails that will build something for me. The text field tag builds me a text input. The form tag builds me a form. It builds me a form tag, but it also adds this authenticity token for me. And then submit will build me the submit button, right? Are there any questions as like understanding what this form tag is doing for me? If I wanted this form to maybe hit the patch or the edit action, how would I change this? Patch, right? Simply refreshing, it will do the post again, but will also add, what's that? The input hidden method override patch. Cool? Rails is powerful. It understands that these things have to exist, so it will build them out for you. This right here would be very difficult to explain and not make sense had you not had that Sinatra lecture with the rack method override. Right? So do you see why Sinatra is taught first and how Rails will build upon it? Cool. So, given that, let's take a look at this. This is a search tag, right? So let's instead, what do we have for, what are the attributes of our airplane? Model. And then, instead of text field tag, maybe I can put for wings. Look what Rails will build. The patch, this text field for model, and a number input for wings. It's just building HTML for you. That's all it's doing, right? In the same way that this is just that number tag. So, this name is wings, right? And this name is model. Is that the params and the key that I want? So I can just use create params on my create. Yeah, right? Absolutely. Cool. Let's take it one step further. Let's go back to post. Let's drop this, a little bit of this action, a little bit of form 4 action. Powerful. Whoa. Form 4. If you have the Rails snippets, right? Let's get rid of this. This one's a little bit different than this one. A little bit, right? This form 4, this form tag. How does form 4 read? In the way that English sounds, right? It's going to be a form for something. A form for what? What do we need this form for? We need this form for an airplane, right? So shouldn't I have something like airplane here? You should have seen this in the 7Cs lab. It was form for a C object. This form for requires an object to build. Inside my new, I have an airplane instance variable. Where would I get this instance variable from? Remember, what does the controller do? It talks to the model and it talks to the controller. So in my new, because remember this is the new coming from new, I need airplane. Right? So in my new airplane, in my new file, I have a new object. Sorry if that's dizzying, I'm going to stop.
I like it.
Okay? It messes with the screen recording, so either way. So at airplane, right? What is at airplane? It is simply an airplane object. Do I have the data right now in this new, simply rendering the form to either find or create this airplane object? No, I only have enough information that this needs some sort of empty shell. Airplane.new will do what for me? It will create a new instance of airplane, but not save it to the database, right? So is ID exist here? No, because it did not save to the database. So model, nil. Wings, nil. Created at, updated at, nil. ID, nil. All in the new. So this form 4 is for a blank, empty airplane object. But the object exists. It is not saved to the database, but the object in Ruby is existing and created, but it is not saved to the database. Are there any questions on that? That's mod 1 stuff, right? So I can simply do this form 4. We talked about it when I talked about the create tables and the migrations. It takes that T block in the create table. This is an F block. This F block, right, or this F parameter in this do end is referring to this form. So I want this form to build me a label field. I think it's just f.label actually. And I want this label for my model. And I want this form to build me a text field for airplane for my model attribute. Can I submit this form? Great. I probably want to create with my form a submit tag or a submit object, right? So notice the tag has some sort of pattern to it. Some form tag, little text field tag, little number field tag, little submit tag. And the form for, it builds a form for me. For each of these form fields, I want a label. I want a text field for this form. I want a submit for this form. Let's take a look. I think this is going too hard. Okay. Oh, I didn't save this. Yeah. So airplane didn't exist, sorry. I didn't save the controller, so airplane never existed. Great. Powerful. Ready? This model. This is what? Where is this coming from? The label, right? And this text field is probably this text field. And this, oh wow, what does that say? Create airplane. As opposed to just janky old submit, right? And all I put was submit here. Because form 4 is very powerful. Let's take a look at exactly how powerful. Let's do this. Is that better? So, remember, I want to grab this form right here. Form builds a little bit of style for me. It's going to post to /airplanes. How did it know to do that? How did it know to do that? A post to /airplanes. Well, in my form tag, I told it exactly a post to /airplanes. But in my form for it, just gives it an object. Where Rails understands the form for must have an object. It will not work without it. You saw the error, right? It says first argument cannot be nil, cannot be empty. So it knows that this airplane object exists. And what did I tell you about the ID of this airplane object? Does it exist? No, it's nil. What does that automatically tell you in Ruby or in active record? It's not saved in the database. So Ruby knows that if the object right here in form 4, the ID is nil, it has not been saved to the database. So naturally, the form, this f block, .submit, knows I'm going to be creating it. So smart. Following RESTful routing, what is the create action for airplanes? A post to /airplane. There is a way to pass it optional parameters, what controller to go to, maybe what action it wants to go to. But if you leave those blank, it will default to the RESTful route. That is how it's happening. Cool? RESTful routing is powerful. Because if I know it's going to be the same every time, I can auto-build it. Great. We talked about this HTML form and this form tag. I also talked about if I were to submit this form tag, right? Let's take a look at this form tag. I submit this form tag form. What are my params on the form tag form? I'm going to get something like this, UTF-8, right? Value of a check mark. I'm going to get authenticity token with this crazy key. I'm going to get model, wings, and that's it, and then it's going to submit. Can I create this object with just my params? No. Why? Because it's going to take the params, and it's going to go, hey, when you try to create this airplane, does it have the attribute of authenticity token? No. Let's do this. Ready? Cool. 9. Submit. Notice how this button went to disabled, and now it's not clickable? Rails will build that into the submit button for you, which is why the submit tag does more than just do submit. Cool? Why am I hanging here again? What's going on? I hit the create. I hit that route of post to airplanes, airplanes create, hitting the controller, def create, hitting the buy bug. Exactly as I tell you. What are params again? All the params are coming through, even in the hidden ones, just exactly as you saw it in Sinatra. If I were to do airplane.create, will these params work? Forbidden attributes, it blocks it. Params, this permitted is false. But it also wouldn't work, even if it permitted true, because there's no such thing as UTF-8. There's no such thing as authenticity token. There's no such thing as commit. There's no such thing as controller or action as attributes inside my airplane object. I now need to, what did I do last time? I created this nested hash that eliminated everything else so that I can only pull in the attributes that I want. And how did I do that? Well, back in the HTML, all I did was I created this nested hash with a key of model. But nested doesn't really make sense, right? I'm trying to create an airplane. I made an airplane hash, and I gave it the key of model. That's how I created that nested hash in my form. Do you remember? Well, let's take a look at this. This is the form tag. Does it do it for me here? Does it do this? Obviously not. I'm like literally typing it, right? Let's take a look at form 4. Form 4 will build the nested hash for me. So powerful. It knows exactly where to go, and it builds this nested for me, this nested hash. Great. Now, this permitted false. Interesting. Really weird. So, I cannot use just the params because it has all of these extra things, also this permitted false. So, let's do this. Inside my model, right? Inside this, let's just put, I don't know, 747, right? Create airplane. I should hit what? I should hit the post to slash airplanes, as I refer to in the routes, will hit the airplanes controller with the create action. Wow, powerful. So, what are my params now? I have the params, and I have a separate hash at a key of airplane. That is all the attributes that I want. Still permitted false. Can I do the params and require the airplane key? I can. What if I want to say, I don't know, permit the model? Permit the model. I now have something called permitted true. The param, actually. Oh yeah, give me that, Chris Brown. That worked, right? Yeah, which question? Okay. That's perfectly acceptable. I'm going to explain it very, very, very quickly. When I have a hash, right? H equals to hash, right? And I do, okay. Bible doesn't like that. I can just create a hash literal, right? I can refer to a hash with the key of dolphin. What will it return me? Nil. If it does not exist. Can I assign it, right? Let's see, something. I can assign it on the fly. If I require a key of dolphin. I cannot assign it anything. And if it does not exist, it will what? It'll just break on me. So the require is safer because I do not want anyone to be able to add anything to my params hash. So I always want to use this require when I'm permitting. And what?
Is that that's a method coming from Rails?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So just to review, all I did was I simply created this airplane with this attribute of model that I simply permitted. Why would I want to permit something? Well, the internet is scary and dangerous, and there are a lot of hackers out there. I want to specifically whitelist only the attributes from my form that I want to come through and touch my database. That's the most dangerous time, right? When something is touching your database, so you want to make sure you whitelist only those attributes. So let's continue. Yeah, you don't want anyone to just mess around and change things. So cool. So here, let's actually now do, let's finish this up, right? Let's make this, instead of this model, I have wings. And I have wings. And what is this? Not a text field, but it's a number field. So refresh. I see this number field. So I can have, I don't know, what's an airplane?
Airbus.
Sure, Airbus, right? How many wings does it have? It's 4 like Goro, right? So when I submit, create airplane, and hit that binding again. What are the params? I have this airplane with model and wings. Can I do this? Right? Cool. Let's check that airplane.last though. Airbus, wings are nil. What are params that require airplane again? Model and wings. It blocked wings. It did not allow it. So, can I do model? Oh, by the way, also, I forgot I have wings in there too. Cool. Now when I create it, wings will go through. So the permit has to be attribute specific. You need to include all the attributes that you actually want to include to go through. So
That would be all of the attributes on your model, right?
yes. So that being said, let's actually write this code then. On my create, I know I need to do airplane.create, and then I did what? This is space just so you can start to see it, right? What did I do? I required the nested hash, which was airplanes, right? Nope, it was airplane. And then I permitted what came through, which were my model attribute and my wings attribute, right? That would work. And this create, where does it come from again?
Active record.
Very good. A post to airplanes. This post to airplanes, should this render or should this redirect? To where? The airplanes. I can do simply /airplanes. That would give me that get to airplanes, right? Let's do this. This code is a bit clunky and not at all readable. Can I do something like def, right? Airplane params, and simply replace this with airplane params. Is anyone confused as to what I just did in this refactor? It's a very, very easy to read refactor. Yeah.
You created a helper method to run the require and permit.
Yep. Was that like the question?
No, you asked.
The question was, are there any questions about the refactor? But thank you for clarifying. Are there questions on the refactor? Yeah.
Yesterday with the C params that look like that, you have private there. Do we need that here too?
Yeah, I'm gonna get there. Questions on the refactor. Moving on. Remember, we want to make sure we whitelist the attributes we want because of dangerous hacksaws from the internet. And this paradigm, this like pattern here, are known as strong params. Cool? It's called strong params. This right here. So if someone says, oh hey, my crate's not working, and then the reply is, did you permit it in your strong params? Will this make sense to you? Right? Cool. Meaning, if I create something and wings is always nil in my database, I'm going to be like, let me see your strong params. Will you know what method to look at? Yes? Now, this right here is whitelisting, right? Will I ever call airplane params outside this controller, outside of this class, in my application somewhere? I will only call it in the create when I'm creating something. So if I don't need it accessible to the public, I want to make sure I privatize all of these methods. Especially because this is what's going to allow things to touch my database. I'm going to lock that down. Questions on this?
I need something to be clear. So for this file as a controller, we agreed that when we are coming in with the route, we will hit the first method we see that matches our route, and after that we're not running anything. How come the last one is going to work?
Say again?
Like when you are coming in with the route, right? If it's coming to index, it will need index and that's it. It's not going to run through any of the other methods.
That's correct.
Right? So how the last one is going to work automatically?
What do you mean this one's going to work automatically?
Like once I hit index, I should be out of the file, right?
Once I hit index, I'm going to touch the model. Remember, the controller is the go-between. I touch the model. The model gives me all the airplanes. Then I render implicitly index, and then I hit. Cool. Then the request response cycle has completed.
So how would the define airplane params work?
Great. Let me ask you this. Ready? Show me the index page. You're going to get all the airplanes, give me the index page, and where am I calling airplane params? Where am I calling and invoking the function, the method airplane params right here? Okay, great.
Okay, so okay, good. Thank you.
Right? If I never invoke the method, it does not matter. Right? Only being invoked here. So my private, I'm just going to call it. Is that clear? Yeah, sweet. So, strong params, cool? Awesome, great. Does everyone understand the difference between the HTML form, the form tag, and the form for? Very true. HTML form is going to be exactly what you write in HTML. The form tag is going to build you the authenticity token. It's also going to add in like this, let's see, where is it? HTML form tag. It's going to build you, whoa. It's going to build you anything you put inside the tags, right? Let's see. All right, you have to tell it exactly where to go with what method. You have to use tags inside the form tag, right? Very obvious pattern here. For what attributes in your model, and then it'll build the submit for you with the submit tag. Form for gives you the nested, and it will infer the RESTful route. Cool? Great. I think we made a couple actually. Let's get back to this index. Bloop. Get back to this index. Cool. Let's see. This model, right? Let's take a look at the index now. How do I get there? Slash airplanes. I have 7047 Airbus twice. Right? Do I have my show page? Do I have a show page? No. Let's create one. How would I do it? First, I want to make the route for show. Does the route for show exist? Right. The route for show exists. So, my airplanes controller, restfully, what would the method be for show? Powerful. Do I need to do anything with my model? Yeah? Get my airplane. Then, what is the response? Render show. Cool. So here, I'm simply going to build in my views for airplanes. I'm going to build. So now, I'm going to build show. And all I'm going to do is take this airplane and give it the model and do something like airplane.wings. I'm just going to put, I would put a label here, but I'm kind of lazy. So I'm just going to put model, and I'm going to put wings. Cool. So if I were to go to airplanes/1, I'm going to see this show page. Ready? See how I had no wings? Terrible. 1 star. Is there an ID of 4? Because I only have 3, right? Cool. Boom. Yeah? Now, back on my index, let's say I wanted to create a link to this model. The feature set I want, if I were to describe it, would be, if I were to say something like, I would like, on my index page, a list of all my airplanes